Discover the incredible moment 5 cops exposed their prejudice against a black woman who's their town's hero. The vibrant Cedar Grove Town Festival buzzed with the sounds of laughter, children chasing balloons, and the tempting aroma of grilled burgers wafting through the air. Emily, a dedicated nurse and a fiercely devoted single mother, felt excitement thrum through her veins as she set up her booth for a free health workshop. She had always fought against the tide of adversity after her husband walked out, and this festival was a chance to witness the fruits of her labor, a community brought together. Just like she had imagined when she first moved here, she chatted with neighbors. The warmth of their camaraderie made her chest swell with pride. Emily's heart swirled with joy knowing she had touched lives. She had counseled parents about vaccinations and taught kids about healthy eating. Yet today held the potential for turmoil. Beneath the cheerful surface, a misunderstanding brewed, smoky like the barbecues lapping softly around her. Suddenly, the laughter faded. A commotion near the cotton candy stand drew curious eyes. 5 local police officers confronted Emily with booming voices like thunder striking in a sunny sky. Her heart raced. Confusion clouded her mind. "Ma'am, we need to ask you some questions," one officer barked, gesturing for her to step aside. It felt like a surreal nightmare. She stood there, eyes wide, disbelieving. Were they really accusing her? The accusations swirled around her. This was supposed to be her day, yet her body tightened, her chest constricted. "What did I do?" she whispered, fighting back tears. A crowd began to gather, curiosity drawing them in like moths to the flame. Emily's good-hearted gestures over the years felt overshadowed by the harshness of their voices. People she had nurtured throughout their most vulnerable moments now hesitated, some frozen in ambivalence. Could they see her, the woman they knew, the neighbor, the mother, the nurse? Or was she merely defined by the color of her skin? Before the situation exploded, an older officer stepped forward. His weary face bore the weight of years of doing the wrong thing, years of hurried judgments that led to thousands of regrets. Clearing his throat, he challenged his colleagues, urging them to reconsider their actions. "Let us not forget who she is." His voice rang strong and steady, cutting through the tension like a knife through the thickest of fog. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. As his words hung in the air, murmurs floated through the crowd, some nodding, understanding, others still skeptical. The shift was palpable. Emily stood amidst the tension, a storm brewing. Yet the call for understanding lingered like a glimmering beacon amidst the clouds. Would the community see the truth hiding beneath the prejudice? Would they reclaim the spirit of Cedar Grove, or would her world come crashing down? As gripping silence enveloped the festival, this moment teetered between redemption and heartbreak. All Emily could do was hold her breath and hope her community would rise above their biases, uniting rather than dividing. As she stood there in the heart of Cedar Grove, uncertain yet unyielding, a pivotal moment lay ahead that could change everything. Hero, the old officer, whose name was Blake, stepped forward, the weight of authority draped easily over his shoulders. "This woman is not a threat. She is part of our community," he insisted, locking eyes with Emily. The soft compassion shining in his gaze was like a lantern cutting through the darkness that had suddenly surrounded them. Around her, the crowd was shifting, exchanging glances, whispering among themselves, trying to piece together what was happening. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a chance to confront an ugly truth they all had ignored. Elizabeth, a mother she'd worked with during health workshops, stepped into the small clearing. "You don't know her. She saved my son when he was sick last winter." Her voice rang out, shaky yet resolute. The crowd began to murmur, shifting again as faces that had once showed uncertainty now poked through with memories of Emily's kindness. Another voice joined in, this one belonging to one of the local teens. "She taught us how to eat right. You can't just treat her like this." The words poured out, one after another, gaining strength as if a tide of support was rising behind her. Blake held up a hand, quieting the crowd. We have to understand what is happening here. Let us listen to her side before we jump to conclusions. His eyes softened as he turned back to Emily. Can you explain what just happened? Taking a deep breath, Emily felt the world around her falling away, the colorful booths, the laughing children. It all dimmed in the face of these accusations. I just set up my booth. I was helping, she started, her voice trembling, but she gathered courage, the faces of her friends urging her on. I've been trying to help our community this festival. It meant a lot to me. Today was supposed to be fun, but I felt like I was being treated like a criminal just for being here. The tension in the air thickened as she spoke. It should have been a day of celebration, yet Emily was standing at the edge of a precipice. Hope for what they could be weighed against the pain of what they were. Silence stretched, heavy and thick. Then, step by step, the townsfolk began to nod along, as if awakening from a slumber. A woman in the back shouted, "She's our nurse. She cares about us." With that simple sentiment, she pulled others toward a reckoning with their own biases. But just then, the situation erupted again, a young man pushing through the crowd with anger flaring in his eyes. It's not enough for her to be nice. She doesn't belong here. He pointed accusingly, his voice sharp. A few murmurs of agreement followed, and suddenly Emily was thrust back into a storm of conflicting emotions, battling against the tide. The crowd was divided now, a heart-wrenching reminder of the fractures that could be ignited with just a few words. Emily's heart raced, her mind clouded with worry for the connections she had fought so hard to forge. Would they drown in division or unite to confront their demons? And then, with each heated word exchanged, she wondered if shedding light on their darkness could salvage their future. As the din of voices rose around her, Emily felt a fresh wave of resolve rise within her. She knew this was a moment that could shift the scales, and she wouldn't back down. "Please, let us talk," she implored, finding strength in her voice. "Let us understand what we are really fighting for before it tears us apart." Would the crowd hear her? Could they set aside their differences and reach for a brighter tomorrow? As tension thickened around her, Emily held her breath, waiting for the flicker of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, they could reclaim the spirit of Cedar Grove once more. Blake stepped back for a moment, feeling the weight of the crowd's gaze, a murmur thrumming like a live wire around him. The young man's aggression hung in the air, a thick fog of distrust that seemed impossible to dispel. Yet in the heart of that turmoil, Emily stood not as a victim but as a beacon. "Why don't we give her a chance to speak?" Another voice chimed in from the back. It was an older man, someone who lived in Cedar Grove longer than most. His tone was steady and carried an air of authority that settled over the crowd like a soothing balm. "Let us listen to her story, plain and simple." Emily's heart raced. The flicker of hope he ignited pushed back the shadows. She took a small step forward, her eyes scanning the faces around her. "I know some of you have doubts. I get that. We're all here in this community, facing similar struggles. But I've worked hard to help in any way I can." The tension twisted like a knife, but as she spoke, she noticed small gestures of support. A few heads nodded. With every word, she felt a pulse of determination. This wasn't just about her. This was about all of them, wrestling with the truth beneath their shared experiences. "I didn't come here to cause trouble. I came to uplift our families, our children. For us all to enjoy what we have together," she continued, her voice finding strength. "But it feels like I'm the outsider now, when really, I've been here all along." Her honesty sliced through the noise, reaching those who had begun to waver. She could see eyes softening as memories awakened, her hands on a sick child's forehead, the laughter shared in past workshops, and the commitments made in the community. But that young man was still there, his arms crossed defiantly, uncertainty boiling just beneath the surface. "You talk a good game, but what proof do we have? We don't know the real you." He spat, frustration etching lines on his face. Emily's heart sank as the word proof echoed in her mind. It was a raw reminder of the barriers that had long separated them. But this was her moment to invite them into her world. "You want proof? Look around you. I'm not here just for me. I'm here for my neighbors, my friends, for you. Let us build a partnership instead of a distance." Emily Elizabeth spoke again, louder now, emboldened by her own realization. "We've witnessed her actions. We know what she has done for this town. It's time to trust in that." As she finished, several voices joined hers. "Yeah, we remember," shouted another woman. The tide began to shift, just a little at first. Emily saw unity starting to form, feeding off their shared stories and trust. "I want to be part of Cedar Grove," she declared, her confidence spilling brightly into the dim space. "Give me a chance to show you how we can stand together. We can learn from each other, heal together." And then, as if it were the nudge they all needed, that young man uncrossed his arms. He looked around, processing the raw emotions bursting forth. "Maybe I was wrong," he muttered, though the uncertainty still clung to him like a shadow. Emily's heart soared. Was this the step toward healing? As she caught his eye, a silent connection sparked between them, the small flicker of understanding breaking through layers of suspicion. Would he take the leap? Would others follow? Blake moved in closer, his presence bolstering Emily even more. "We've been neglecting our own for too long," he said, voice authoritative but compassionate. "Let us not let fear divide us any longer." The crowd shimmered with a mix of hope and apprehension, like a tide waiting to crash. Emily felt the moment ripple around her, a convergence of emotions that promised to either fracture or unite them. And then the young man took a deep breath, stepping forward hesitantly. The crowd fell quiet once more, holding their collective breath, drawn into the possibility of change. Could this be the turning point for Cedar Grove? As Emily stood on the edge of newfound hope, she wondered, would they embrace the chance for connection or retreat into fear? The young man's breath wavered as he stood before the crowd. His eyes darted from Emily to the assembled faces, each a mirror of fear, resentment, and slowly blossoming hope. I guess we've all been stuck in our own heads," he finally admitted, voice shaking with vulnerability. "I said things without really thinking about the person standing before me." A ripple of surprise moved through the crowd. Emily felt her heart skip. This was a shift. "It's okay," she replied gently, not wanting to push him too hard. "We all have our misconceptions." The crowd seemed to exhale together, tension unwinding like a coiled spring. Hope felt infectious, washing over faces that had once been tense and hostile. The young man took another step forward, and suddenly, he wasn't just an adversary. He was a person, just like the rest of them, someone searching for answers amid the noise of their everyday lives. "Why don't you tell us more about what you've done for our community, Emily?" he asked, a flicker of sincerity illuminating his eyes. This small question felt like a breakthrough, a doorway opening. Emily smiled. "I've tried to bring resources to Cedar Grove, from health seminars to after-school programs. I just want our kids to have a future, and for families to know they're not alone in their struggles." Her words hung in the air, and individuals began to step forward. "I remember when Emily helped my son with his reading," a mother chimed in, tears welling in her eyes. "He was struggling. She made him feel special again. As I recall, she organized that food drive last winter," another voice called out, sending a surge of energy through the gathering. "We were all so thankful then." Each memory built upon the last, creating a tapestry of shared experiences that knit the community closer together. A sense of camaraderie blossomed, rekindling connections they thought they had lost. Blake stood back and felt his chest swell with pride. The shaming echoes hushed, replaced by laughter and sounds of agreement. But deep down, a gnawing fear remained. Would it be enough? The young man, still standing firmly among them, cleared his throat. What if we took this a step further? Can we start a community project together?" His proposal landed like a gift, wild with possibilities. Emily's heart nearly stopped as she looked at him, then swept her gaze over the crowd. Excitement crackled in the air. The idea of working side by side ignited a flame in her spirit. "Yes, let us create something that can bridge the gaps we've built up over the years." The crowd roared in response, hope lifting them as one. Emily smiled, envisioning playgrounds, gardens, art programs, anything that could weave a stronger fabric for Cedar Grove. But then, just as emotions flared, a sharp voice pierced through. "Not everyone is going to welcome this." "There are those who won't change," said a man lurking at the edge of the crowd, his arms crossed defiantly. The emerging enthusiasm dimmed slightly, shadows creeping back over the faces around her. "Why not? We're showing up for each other," the young man shot back, an edge sharpening his voice. "Talk is cheap," the other replied, disdainful. "Prove it. Actions speak louder than pleas." Blake felt a tightening in his gut. Despite the hopeful tide, They were on the brink of falling apart again. He needed to act fast. What if we held a town hall? A real dialogue. No barriers, just open hearts and minds, he suggested, sensing the tension coiling like a spring. Will it make a difference? Someone muttered from the back, doubt shadowing their face. Emily met their gaze, solid and unwavering. It will if we choose to show up. Would they rise up or hide away when it was time to face the truth in the light of day? As the crowd murmured and exchanged glances, the question hung suspended, filling the air with an uneasy anticipation. All eyes turned back to Emily, their fate uncertain, their fate entwined. The crowd fell into a charged silence. Blake's heart raced as he watched their expressions shift, a blend of fear and resolve playing across many faces. He could feel the weight of the moment, the sense of potential hanging thicker than the air itself. They were teetering on the brink of something monumental. Let us set a date, Emily declared, her voice rising above the tension. If we can agree to meet and talk about how we want Cedar Grove to be, we'll take the first step. Together. A few murmurs of agreement flitted through the crowd, but they were faint, like whispers under a blanket of uncertainty. The skeptical man from the edge of the group shifted, still crossing his arms defensively. And what if no one shows up? What if it's just a waste of time? He challenged, his tone dripping with cynicism. Emily took a deep breath, her heart pounding with each beat. She could feel a mix of emotions bubbling up inside her. What if we just don't try? She countered, her voice firm. If we stay silent, nothing will change. Is that what we want? The skeptical man hesitated, opening and closing his mouth as if searching for a response, but finding none. The young man, who had voiced the call for a project, stepped closer. Look, I understand your doubts, but I've seen what happens when we don't connect. The chasms between us just grow wider. But Emily is right. We have to start somewhere, and we can't do it alone. The crowd seemed to lean in, the earlier doubt beginning to give way to something more hopeful. Brief exchanges of glances turned into nods as more people joined in. Let us be the change we want to see, a woman's voice rose from the back, steady and passionate. If we want Cedar Grove to shine, we have to put in the work. Together. The moments that followed were electric. One by one, community members began to speak up, their voices weaving into a tapestry of shared intention. Ideas poured out like rain. A garden where everyone could plant something, an art exhibit showcasing local talent, a theater group for children, a neighborhood cleanup day. Each suggestion brought not only excitement, but an undeniable sense of belonging. Blake felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. This was more than a meeting, it was a rebirth. And as he glanced around, he saw Emily standing tall, her spirit undeterred, fostering this new energy. She was the heart of Cedar Grove, but the shadows that lingered at the edge of the crowd still ached for attention. Change doesn't come easy. The cynical man cut in again, voice steady but tinged with an edge. You can't just dream it away. You're right, Emily responded, her voice softer now, capturing his gaze. We have to work for it. But we can't do it unless we believe in one another. I believe in this community. Do you? Surprisingly, the man didn't look away. Could she reach him? Could they truly break through years of misunderstanding and resentment together? And just like that, the atmosphere shifted again. For the first time, the man unwrapped his arms, revealing that he'd been guarding not just himself, but all the unsaid frustrations he carried. We have to be ready, someone else called out. Ready to hold each other accountable, to stand up when things get hard. Emily nodded, absorbing all the words, every gesture. They were forging connections, melting ice that had stifled them for years. But just as hope surged within her, a sudden noise crackled over the gathering, slicing through the air like a blade of familiar siren echoing too close. All heads turned. Uneasy murmurs rippled through the audience. Blake felt his stomach drop. What is happening? He whispered to Emily as he squinted toward the approaching lights. The community's bubbling anticipation flipped back into tension as the police car pulled up, officers stepping out and scanning the crowd. What would this mean for them? Would their fragile unity hold against the weight of unexpected scrutiny? The question hung there, thick and heavy, leaving everyone wondering. Would this moment of truth bring them together or tear them apart? The siren's wail faded into the background as the officers approached, their presence an intrusion on the atmosphere Emily had worked so hard to nurture. Blake could see the apprehension sweeping through the crowd like a gust of wind. Hearts that had just begun to beat stronger now faltered, uncertainty creeping in. He glanced at Emily, who squared her shoulders as if bracing for a storm. "What now?" he murmured, feeling the tension ripple through him. "I'll speak to them," Emily replied, her voice steady, but Blake could see the flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. She stepped forward, threading her way through the crowd. Blake wanted to reach out, to stop her, but he felt anchored to the spot, the moment twisting time into a surreal slow motion. The police officers exchanged wary glances, obviously sizing up the situation. Blake watched Emily stand confidently before them, her hands clasped in front of her. "We're having a community meeting," she said, her voice ringing clear, cutting through the quiet like a lighthouse beam in the fog. "We're discussing ways to improve our neighborhood together." The lead officer, a burly man with arms crossed tightly across his chest, stepped forward. "People complained about a noise disturbance," he stated, his eyes scanning the crowd, lingering on Emily. She felt the weight of his gaze and stood taller, the atmosphere thick with unspoken judgment. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Voices that had been enthusiastic just moments ago now lowered to anxious whispers. Blake could see the skepticism hardening around them, that same cynicism amplified by the unexpected intrusion of authority. "What kind of meeting is this exactly?" the officer asked, skeptical. "How do we know it's not just a gathering for trouble?" Emily's eyes narrowed, pulse racing beneath the scrutiny. "We're just trying to build connections," she replied earnestly, "to reach out to one another, to share our stories and ideas." The officer's expression didn't change. "Seems like a lot of people gathered here. We need to ensure nobody is up to something." He gestured at the others standing behind him. "Just doing our job." That moment hung in the balance, the weight of their fear and mistrust stacking high. Emily's resilience clashed with their preconceptions. Before Blake could step in, a voice rang out from the crowd, shaky but determined. "We're not a threat. We're neighbors trying to make things better here." The crowd seemed to breathe as one, fueled by the voice of solidarity. Blake felt a spark reignite within him, hope flickering like a flame in the dark. The officer glanced back, his irritation evident. "I still don't like the looks of this." But before he could respond further, another voice chimed in. "We just want our community to thrive. Isn't that worth listening to?" This time it was the man who had initially raised concerns, his tone softer, no longer closed off. He turned to the officer, who stood uncertain, caught in the web of his past judgments. "What if we showed you we're working toward building something good?" The man continued. "We can invite you to be part of it." The tension shifted. Blake held his breath. Could this appeal crack through the layer of preconceived ideas? Emily jumped in, her heart pounding. "We're holding a meeting. Talk to us, listen to us. We're all human here. Join us instead of misunderstanding us." The officers exchanged glances, the air thick with hesitation. Could they really bridge this gap? In that pivotal moment, Blake couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was brewing. All it would take was one step, one officer willing to look beyond the badge. One moment of choice could change everything. His mind raced as he watched them waver. Would they join the community's effort, or would fear keep them locked in their own divisions? And as he looked at Emily, standing resolute, he knew the answer might come down to this: how far they were willing to reach out. With uncertainty simmering and hearts pounding, the stage was set for change, but would it come? What would happen next? Emily felt the tension coil around her like a tightening rope. Every eye in the crowd was on her, and she could sense the police officers shifting their weight, uncertain but intrigued. The conversation hung in the air, delicate and fragile, waiting for someone to be brave enough to break it. Look, she took a breath, searching for the words that could bridge the gap. "This isn't just about a meeting. It's about hope. We're trying to create a space where everyone feels welcomed and heard. We want to stand together." The lead officer raised an eyebrow, still skeptical. "This is neighborhoods talking about a cookout or something." His tone dripped with doubt. "No," Emily replied, her voice firm. "This is about connecting on a deeper level. We want to hear your concerns, too. We live in a world divided by misunderstandings." She gestured toward the crowd, her heart racing as she opened her arms, inviting them in. "We need to know each other's stories. We're not just residents. We're a community." A young woman from the crowd stepped forward, her voice steady. "I have lived here my whole life, and I can tell you there are fears on both sides. It often feels like a wall dividing us. We want to move past that." The officer blinked, visibly softening. Blake's heart sped up as he saw the shift in the crowd. Hope blossomed like flowers breaking through the snow. The second officer beside the lead one seemed to take a step closer to the gathering, captivated by the possibilities unfolding. "All right," he finally said, crossing his arms but relaxing his stance. "So let us say we listen. What does that look like?" An older gentleman stepped forward, his gray hair catching the fading light. "It looks like an open circle, sharing stories, sharing dreams. And yes, sharing our grievances too. We can talk about what we wish to change. If you want, let us start today." Emily felt a rush of warmth in her chest. She could see the flickers of hope igniting in others as they watched their leaders shift from suspicion to curiosity. The lead officer glanced between his colleagues, clearly hesitant but fascinated. "Okay, I'll consider it as long as everyone can agree to keep this peaceful." The tension dissipated, replaced by something lighter, electric. Blake let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He looked at Emily, who was finally gracing him with a smile, even if it was laced with worry. The crowd buzzed softly, carrying their whispered excitement and cautious optimism. "I think this is the first step," Emily said, a quiet confidence in her words. But just as the crowd began to settle into a new rhythm, a loud shout sliced through the air, drawing every gaze. It was a voice Blake recognized all too well. "What is going on here?" They turned to see a group of men coming toward them. Their faces bore expressions of anger and confusion. Blake felt the air thicken once more, uncertainty creeping back into the hearts of the crowd. "Looks like we've got a problem," he muttered, instinctively moving closer to Emily. Emily's jaw tightened. "We need to stand strong," she whispered, determination shining in her eyes. Would this new challenge threaten the fragile bridge they were trying to build? As the men approached, Blake felt a chill settle in. How could they keep the hope alive? The crowd held its breath in anticipation, waiting to see how the night would unfold. Would they hold on to their fragile connection, or would they be swept away by fear once more? Panic rippled through the crowd as the group of men drew closer, their intimidating stance fueled by confusion and frustration. Blake felt Emily's hand squeeze his, both a plea for strength and a silent vow to stand united. This was the moment they all feared and fought against. Confrontation amidst the hope they had just begun to build. "Hey," one of the men shouted again, now just a few feet away. "What's with this little get-together? You think we want to listen to you?" His voice dripped with disdain, and anger crackled in the air like static electricity. Emily stepped forward, her heart thundering. "We're starting a conversation," she said, her voice steady, but Blake could see the tremor behind her eyes. "We want to talk about how we can understand each other better." "Understand each other?" The man laughed bitterly. "You think it's that easy? You think we're just going to sit here and listen to some platitudes?" The other men exchanged nods, their sneers holding an unsettling weight. Blake moved to intercept, but Emily held him back gently. "Let me," she breathed, confidence hardening her resolve. She faced the men, her gaze unwavering. "There's fear on both sides, and we can either let it divide us further or take the first step to breaking down those walls." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Emily's courage sparked a flicker of recognition in some nearby faces. One voice from the back chimed in, "We don't want to fight. We want to talk." For every naysayer in front of them, there were allies in the audience. But it was uncertain how many would hold the line against rising tension. "Talk," the lead man scoffed. "What do you know about our talk? You don't understand where we're coming from." "I might not have lived your experiences," Emily replied earnestly, "but I want to understand. Just like you want to be understood." Her voice rang out, echoing against the evening air. "This is not about blame. It's about humanity." Another man, less aggressive but clearly conflicted, shifted on his feet. "Why should we trust you? You don't know what it's like out here." Blake could see the gears turning in their heads. They were caught between fear and the longing for a real connection, just like everyone else. "Because trust has to start somewhere," Emily implored, urgency threading through her words. "You can talk to us, share those fears. But we need to break this cycle. I promise you, open dialogue isn't a weakness, it's a strength." Silence broke over the group like a stillness after a storm. The tension, heavy enough to cut, started to ebb slightly, replaced by the budding idea that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't an impossible task. That was when one of the men finally stepped forward, still guarded, but visibly reconsidering. "Fine," he spat, arms crossed. "Let us hear what you've got. But keep it real, no fluff." Emily's heartbeat steadied at the opening, a subtle shift that ignited hope once again. She opened her mouth to respond, but the moment was interrupted by a distant sound, sirens, blaring and urgent, unraveling the fragile calm they had just begun to build. "Great, now what?" Blake muttered under his breath, anxiety flooding back into his mind. As the lights flashed in the distance, the crowd recoiled slightly, whispers swirling around like leaves in a gust of wind. This was far from over. With matters escalating and hope hanging by a thread, how would they navigate this new storm? How could they salvage their connection in the face of chaos? The night was unfolding unpredictably, and their moment of truth was lurking just ahead. Blake's heart raced in his chest, the sirens blaring louder as they approached. The flickering lights cast an eerie glow over the crowd, transforming the moment of hope into one drenched in uncertainty. Emily stood tall, her strength holding the group together, even as tension twisted through the air. "Stay calm," she urged, her voice slicing through the noise. "We're not here to cause trouble." "Look," the lead man snarled, glancing back at his group. "This isn't just some picnic where we hold hands and sing. There are real issues here, real lives at stake." Blake could see the fear in the eyes of those around him. Some clutched their friends, while others stood steely-eyed, ready to back off or push forward depending on the next move. Emily's courage shone through, and he could feel it ripple across the crowd, a shared pulse of defiance and fragility. "Then let us talk about it," Emily replied, her voice rising above the chaos. "What are those issues? Let us put them on the table." But just as hope hung in the air, an officer stepped out from the flashing lights, sauntering toward the gathering, authority written all over his face. "What is going on here?" he demanded, surveying the scene. Blake's stomach dropped. This was the last thing they needed. "There's no need for you to get involved," one of the men called back, his tone sharpening. "Doesn't matter," the officer shot back. "I'm here now. You're causing a disturbance." Suddenly, the air felt thick with confrontation. Emily turned to the officer, her expression steady. "We're trying to have a dialogue. There's been too much division, and we just want to understand each other." The officer raised an eyebrow, studying her. "And you think shouting in the street is the way to do it?" "Ma'am," he continued, addressing Emily, "you're risking a lot by stirring this pot. You know how these things go." Another man from the back shouted, "What is that supposed to mean? You think we can't handle a conversation?" The challenge echoed off the buildings, infused with resentment. The officer's eyes narrowed, a hint of condescension creeping in. "Look, lady, this isn't your neighborhood. It's dangerous out here, and you're playing with fire." Blake's chest tightened. The officer's words dripped with a dismissive tone, one he had heard far too many times. Emily, however, stepped forward again, her face a mask of determination. "What if I told you I understand danger? What if I told you I know fear? We can't just keep living in separate worlds, judging each other without ever trying to connect." Her words hung in the air, each syllable infused with a fervor that caught even Blake off guard. The murmurs behind him swelled as individuals began to nod, resonating with the truth in Emily's plea. But the officer crossed his arms, undeterred. "Your naivety will get you hurt." "No." Emily's voice cracked through the tension. "It's acceptance that changes lives. I refuse to let ignorance win." Blake sensed the tide shifting, the embers of hope igniting stronger than before. But just as a faint smile crept onto his face, the officer unleashed a dismissive laugh, its sharpness cutting through the moment. "Let us see how that plays out when you're alone. Let us see if they stay to protect you." The crowd went silent, the laughter ringing hauntingly in their ears. An unshakable tension lingered in the air, a harsh reminder of the distrust that loomed over them all. Blake looked at Emily, knowing they were at a precipice. How could they bring down these walls without devastating consequences? How could they push forward when the specter of fear threatened to swallow them whole? Just then, another squad car pulled up, lights flashing, sirens blaring, bringing an overwhelming swell of unease. In that moment, Blake's resolve solidified. They couldn't let fear dictate their next steps. As the new officer stepped out, Blake realized they faced a critical moment. Would they keep pushing for connection, or would it all blow apart in front of their eyes? What would happen next? In the charged atmosphere of Cedar Grove, everything hinged on that moment. Emily met Blake's eyes, her determination unbroken despite the storm brewing around them. "We have to stand our ground," she whispered, her conviction solidifying like steel. The community's spirit flickered, a candle fighting against the wind, but each head turned slowly toward her, eager yet uncertain. The fresh officers approached, assessing the crowd with skepticism. Emily stepped up again, raising her voice to pierce the rising tension. "We're not a threat, we're neighbors. And we're here to listen, to learn, to heal." The words filled the air, imbued with an urgency like an electric charge. The lead officer, an imposing figure with hardened features, scrutinized her for a beat before glancing at his partners. "What is the issue here?" he inquired, his tone challenging. His curiosity felt like both an invitation and an obstacle, teetering dangerously on the edge of confrontation. "We're trying to open a dialogue," Emily replied firmly. "We want to hear concerns from everyone because that's the only way we can truly move forward together." The tension visibly swayed. Blake caught a glimpse of uncertainty passing between the new officers, a flicker of realization that perhaps, after all the years of division, this gathering was more than just noise. "Is that what you think you're doing?" barked the lead officer, skepticism lacing his voice. "You think shouting in the streets gets anything resolved?" But the community didn't flinch. Those who once simmered with resentment now leaned in closer, inclining their heads toward Emily, exchanging glances of recognition. Before the officer could retort, a young woman, who had joined Emily's health workshops, finally stepped forward. "You have no idea what we've faced," she said, her voice brave. "But we're finding strength together. All of us." The shift was palpable. The crowd rallied behind Emily, sensing the power of unity against the shadow of ignorance. Nearby, Blake could see the hardened expressions soften, acceptance blooming in hesitant smiles. "I've been a police officer here for years," the lead officer relented, lowering his arms slightly, finally allowing himself to lean into the hope. "But we've never really talked. We've just been doing our jobs. I'm curious about what you really want for this town. More than anything, we want a safe space to understand one another," Emily responded, her voice carrying through the gathering like a lifeline. "We need to share our stories. It's not about us versus them. It's about all of us moving forward as one community." The mysterious shadows of doubt that loomed began to lift, like fog drifting away with the dawn. Around them, people began to share their pressing concerns, fears of safety, need for support, but mingled with stories of belonging, trust, and hope. And just like that, the dialogue sparked to life, like fireworks igniting the night sky. One after the other, voices chimed in, weaving their narratives together and reaffirming ties that had once felt frayed. Each shared personal experience became a stitch in the fabric of Cedar Grove, slowly knitting it back together. That moment, Emily felt a swelling in her heart, a mixture of joy and relief. Her shoulders relaxed, the defiance she felt throughout the evening easing into camaraderie. "See? Right there," she exclaimed, buoyed by the energy around her. "This is what we can achieve together." Blake watched, his heart lightening as unity began to fill the gaps left by years of neglect and prejudice. They had fought the storm, weathered its harshness, and now, together, they were rising above it. Emily was no longer alone. She was surrounded by souls ready to believe, echoing her courage back to her, illuminating a future full of shared dreams. The lead officer finally stood softened, glancing at the community with genuine resolve. "Let us find a way to come together and pave a path forward. We can host regular meetups, allow voices to be heard. I want us to collaborate." Overjoyed murmurs surged through the crowd. They had reclaimed their spirit. Emily smiled, feeling the warmth of collective empowerment spreading through her like a soft dawn. And as the festival lights illuminated their hopeful faces, she knew something monumental had shifted. Cedar Grove was not just a town, but a family ready to write a new story in sincerity, compassion, and unwavering support. Weeks later, as they gathered for their first community dialogue, Emily stood among familiar faces, radiant with a sense of achievement. They bypassed the dark clouds of their past, ready to embrace a brighter tomorrow together. This was their moment, a testament to transformation. And while the journey ahead might still hold challenges, here stood a community emboldened by their choice to unite, ready to continue weaving a brighter and more connected Cedar Grove. If you felt the power of this moment, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help connect more hearts. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this powerful transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this amazing journey. Join us in spreading hope and unity together. We can make a difference.